Thank you, Joseph, for such an incredible presentation, and thank all for coming here. Well, Venezuelans are fighting for their freedom right now. The humanitarian apocalypse has hit more than 4 million people, and thousands have been unjustly, unlawfully detained and tortured in my country. I am one of those Venezuelans. I'm a torture survivor. And I thank God that the United States gave me another opportunity to be free. However, while I'm here, I still almost 1,000 other political prisoners and fellow citizens currently being beaten and tortured for the only crime of dreaming a free country. When I was 60 years old, I met Mayor Hugo Chavez giving a speech to the freshman class of the military cadets. He was already building his cast of rouge military officers who served their own ideals and interests rather than those of Venezuelans. Chavez seduced middle-rank officers to incite a failed coup d'etat in 1992, but later rose to power in 1999. I immediately began to corrupt the Venezuelan army through increasingly placing underserved loyalist officers in high-ranking positions of leadership across the state companies and non-security-related state ministries. At that moment, I realized that the destruction of Venezuela could be the Chavez's biggest legacy. In 2002, I was the commander of the senior cadets of the military academy in Caracas. I saw high-ranking military officers participating in partisan activities, labeling dissidents as enemies, and even confronting civilians with force. That situation made many officers think deeply about the role we should play if this trend continues. Therefore, the Bolivarian Revolution under Hugo Chavez began to purge the military of the legal framework of the new constitution to neutralize any dissent from the Venezuelan armed force. That is to say, under the original 1961 constitution, the Venezuelan military could not perform any political activity. However, the new 1999 constitution eliminated this ban, and thus the Venezuelan army began to be active in politics. From that moment on, the Venezuelan military was able to support and defend not just the commander-in-chief, but his political party as well. At the same time, Chavez started to corrupt and criminalize the Venezuelan military by connecting some to the VRIC and other criminal actors involved in drug trafficking, illegal mining, extortion, and kidnapping, all under military protection. Chavez was motivated and inspired by their other revolutions around the world. Aside the FARC and ELN and Cuba, Chavez followed and studied closely the Maoists from China, the Bolsheviks from Russia, and the Ayatollahs from Iran. His Bolivarian Revolution was always meant to link to anti-American revolutions around the world. When I was working in Cabin from 2005 to 2008, which is the Venezuelan military industry, Chavez closed the door to the US and opened up military and security cooperation with the true aces of evil, namely Cuba, China, Russia, and Iran. Not only as investors in Venezuela energy and mining sectors, but also the principal suppliers of deadly military aid, as well as cybersecurity, all to help his pursuit of total popular and social control of the population. Russia's exported Rosoboner export sold around $12 billion in arms in Venezuela. China sold about $1 billion in weaponry and loaned $60 billion in total, to include 3 spy satellites. Iran engaged in covert military projects dealing with drones and chemical parks. Chavez also indoctrinate the Venezuelan military with the principles of asymmetric war, to include mainstream books on peripheral warfare and revolutionary Islam, and Bojan Giap book on People's War, People's Army, as mandatory in the military courses. This doctrine, based on the notion of an army people united at war, has the United States as the enemy and the FARC and Iran pro-government militia as the allies. Russia, China, and Iran support these asymmetrical actions in Venezuela and have so done for a long time. For the last 15 years, these countries have engaged high-level military intelligence, communications, and security cooperation in Venezuela. In 2009, my military career came to an end. 2 years before, in 2007, I coordinated with various student movements to hand Chavez his first electoral defeat. Since then, I was placed under close surveillance by the Army's intelligence agency. Thus, I resigned my commission in 2009. This electoral defeat only reinforced the regime's resolve to advance the revolution at all costs. This did not change when Chavez died in 2013 and Maduro took over. It only got worse. Under Maduro, Venezuelan military officers loyal to Chavismo forced closer alliances with terrorist factions such as Hezbollah and ELN, and criminal structures emerged such as El Cartel de los Soles. Combined, these illicit actors control more than 60% of the territory in Venezuela. These illicit activities have enriched high-ranking officers in the military, trickle-down corruption among the lower ranks, and create a de facto parallel state, where the systematic and well-documented environmental and human rights abuses occurs with the regime support. On May 2014, almost 5 years ago, I was out of the office when I received a call from an employee on my cell phone. He told me that the Commission of the Bolivarian National Intelligence Services was out of my office, looking for the company's director. Hoping to prevent the arrest against an employee of my company, I decided to confront the political police. They placed envelopes with money and claimed that it was seized evidence. They took my cell phone, my personal computer, and all my company devices. At this point, I realized I could not see my family for a long time. The Maduro regime's brutal repression have been shown to the world. They beat and even killed demonstrations in plain sight in front of the cameras. So imagine what they do to the detainees in concealed darkness of their dungeons. In my case, I never thought that Dante was right in describing the last and the most terrible cycle of hell, where the most profound isolation is to suffer separation in a jailed hell. I spent more than 6 months in the torture chamber known as the tomb, La Tumba, a cold basement 5 stories on the ground, not only suffering isolation, but hearing others being tortured and crumbling. The torture is meant to break one's soul, to force you to publicly admit to their lies and their manipulations. Even if you refuse, the system is designed to validate the regime version regardless of the lack of evidence. I was the first-hand witness of the manipulation of the judiciary to persecute dissidents. Thousands have suffered similar experience. The government's goal is simple: control the population by instilling fear. Although other brutal dictatorships have oppressed and killed their people, Maduro regime has a purpose beyond the criminal activity, human rights abuses, and crimes against humanity. Their goal is to conquest. The current crisis in Venezuela goes beyond the result of an inept or inefficient government. The current crisis goes beyond just a criminal regime. The Bolivarian Revolution is meant to be utilized as a proxy conflict to forcibly displace millions of refugees, to challenge the sovereignty of neighboring states, eventually reaching the US southern border. The Bolivarian Revolution is a tool of asymmetric warfare. The Venezuelan military cannot solve this challenge due to all the reasons I stated before, and because they are constantly and continuously monitored by the external and regional actors. We as Venezuelans are trying to solve the crisis in Venezuela. But we must understand that the country is kidnapped by the extra-regional actors, namely Russia, Iran, China, and increasingly Turkey. The global powers have decided that the destruction of many will benefit of the few, and that proxy war in Venezuela is necessary to defeat the United States and the Western Hemisphere. We, Venezuelans, cannot solve this problem alone. Thank you.